Her story begins not in the gilded halls of a palace, but in the quiet fields of Ruthenia. Here, a young girl named Alexandra lived an ordinary life, completely unaware that destiny was about to tear her world apart. Raiders swept through her homeland, ripping her from her family and casting her into the brutal world of slave traders. The journey to the heart of the Ottoman Empire was filled with fear and uncertainty, a brutal introduction to a life she never chose. But inside this captive girl burned a resilience that no chains could extinguish. When she finally crossed the threshold of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, she entered a world of silent rivalries and rigid rules. The Imperial Harem was a city within a city, home to thousands of women whose lives were governed by ancient traditions and the whims of a sultan they might never even meet. Some prayed for a moment of his attention, others for a bit of comfort, and many simply struggled to survive another day. But Alexandra, now given a new name, Hurrem, was different. Even in this tense, unfamiliar world, she laughed. She smiled through the fear. There was a freedom in her spirit that defied the oppressive routines of the harem. The palace attendants whispered about her, unsure if it was innocence or just plain boldness. What they didn't know was that it was something much deeper. What truly set Hurrem apart was her razor-sharp mind. She devoured languages, quickly learning Turkish, Persian, and all the complex rituals of palace life. She studied the women around her, mapping out their alliances, their grudges, and their hidden strategies. In this cutthroat environment, survival demanded adaptation, and she was a master of it. Her unique spirit didn't go unnoticed for long. One day, she was summoned to meet the most powerful man in the world, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. That first encounter would change the course of history. Suleiman was immediately captivated by her laughter, a sound so rare within the stern palace walls. He saw a fire in her eyes that mirrored her innocent smile. Unlike the other women who approached him with rehearsed obedience, Hurrem was genuine. She wasn't intimidated into silence. She let her true self shine. The connection was electric, surprising even the Sultan, who was used to flattery but not genuine enchantment. This seemingly simple meeting was the spark that ignited one of history's most legendary love stories. As the Sultan summoned Hurrem again and again, whispers turned into a storm of gossip. No one could understand how this foreign captive had so quickly become his favorite. Her rivals watched with growing suspicion, especially Mahidevran, Suleiman's first consort and the mother of his eldest son, Prince Mustafa. For years, Mahidevran had held a respected position as the mother of the heir apparent. Hurrem's sudden rise threatened everything she had. The predictable hierarchy of the palace began to crumble as Suleiman's affection for Hurrem grew into something more profound. Despite the hostility surrounding her, Hurrem's influence soared. It wasn't just her charm. It was her intellect. She and Suleiman discussed poetry, politics, and the great affairs of the empire. She wasn't just a beautiful companion. She was a confidant, an advisor with a stunningly clear perspective. As their love deepened, so did her power. She bore him children, Mehmed, Selim, Bayezid, and Sehangir, and with each son, her position grew stronger. But power in the Ottoman court always came at a price. As Hurrem rose, Mahidevran fell, and the tension between them finally exploded. In a fit of rage, Mahidevran physically attacked Hurrem, leaving her bruised and in tears. When Suleiman found out, his anger reshaped the future of the harem. Mahidevran was stripped of her status and sent away from the center of power. At that moment, Hurrem's enemies realized she was no passing fancy. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with. And then something happened that shook the Ottoman dynasty to its very core. In a move that defied centuries of tradition, Sultan Suleiman married Hurrem, making her his legal wife. The empire was stunned. A sultan hadn't married a concubine in over 100 years. His advisors warned him, the traditionalists were outraged, and her rivals were terrified. But Suleiman's love was stronger than tradition. Hurrem was no longer a favorite. She was the queen. This marriage secured her children's future and cemented her name in the annals of history. With her new title as Haseki Sultan, Hurrem's influence expanded beyond the palace walls. She wasn't content to just be a queen, she became a philanthropist. She commissioned magnificent mosques, public baths, soup kitchens for the poor, and hospitals. She corresponded with foreign kings and queens, acting as a diplomatic advisor to her husband. Her letters to Suleiman while he was on military campaigns reveal an incredible political mind. They were filled not just with love and longing, but with sharp analysis and strategic advice, painting a picture of a true partnership. But even as she built a legacy of charity and diplomacy, a dark cloud loomed on the horizon: Prince Mustafa. As Suleiman's eldest son, he was the people's choice, the army's favorite, and the presumed heir to the throne. But for Hurrem, he represented the single greatest threat to her own sons. Ottoman law was brutal. When a new sultan took power, his brothers were often executed to prevent civil war. If Mustafa became sultan, Hurrem's sons would almost certainly be killed. Her fear for her children is believed to have fueled a quiet but relentless political war. She built powerful alliances, most notably with Rustam Pasha, the Grand Vizier, who was also married to her daughter. Whispers and rumors about Mustafa's ambition began to circulate. Letters, some real and some likely forged, suggested he was plotting to overthrow his father. We may never know if Hurrem orchestrated this campaign directly, but her influence was undeniable. The breaking point came in 1553. Convinced that his son was a traitor, Suleiman summoned Mustafa to his tent during a military campaign. As the beloved prince entered, he was ambushed and strangled by the sultan's order. The empire was plunged into grief and outrage. The army, the people, everyone had adored Mustafa. His execution ignited a firestorm, and while Rustam Pasha was temporarily dismissed to quell the public's anger, all eyes turned to Hurrem. Guilty or not, the world blamed her. This was the beginning of her fall from grace. She had saved her sons, but the cost was immense. The public that once admired her charity now saw her as a manipulative schemer. The shadow of Mustafa's death hung over the palace, and it weighed heavily on her soul. Though she retained her influence with the Sultan, the political and emotional toll was devastating. In her final years, Hurrem's health began to fail. She suffered from chronic pain and fatigue, perhaps worn down by the decades of struggle and the burden of her choices. Yet, her bond with Suleiman remained unbreakable. He spent countless hours by her side, a testament to a love that had weathered every storm. Hurrem Sultan died in 1558. Suleiman was shattered. The magnificent sultan, known for his stoic strength, mourned her so deeply that he withdrew from public life for long periods. He built her a grand mausoleum right next to his own at the Suleimani Mosque, an unprecedented honor, a final declaration that she was his one true partner. After her death, the chaos she had fought so hard to prevent finally erupted. Her surviving sons, Selim and Bayezid, went to war with each other for the throne. Bayezid was defeated and executed, leaving Selim to become the next sultan. But Selim II lacked his father's greatness, and many historians believe this bitter succession struggle marked the beginning of the Ottoman Empire's long, slow decline. Hurrem's legacy is a tapestry of triumph and tragedy. She was the slave girl who became a queen, shattering traditions and redefining the role of women in one of history's greatest empires. She was a builder, a diplomat, and a political mastermind. But her rise was paved with ruthless ambition, and her victories were inseparable from the pain they caused. Her story endures not because she was a saint, but because she was powerful, flawed, and fiercely human. Hurrem Sultan remains a timeless symbol of how a single underestimated woman can change the fate of an empire. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible stories from history. See you next time.